Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Harris, and I am pleased to welcome you on behalf of the National High School Center and the American Youth Policy Forum to this webinar on aligning resources, structures, and supports for actualizing college and career readiness. The dictionary defines actualizing as to make something actual or real, or to make something come about. In the college and career readiness landscape, this process takes place on multiple levels and in multiple ways. Not surprisingly, alignment of resources, structures, and supports is the highest priority challenge identified by a variety of college and career readiness stakeholders with whom we have interacted over the past several months. This is the fourth in a series of Tuesday webinars in June that focus on a variety of issues and practices related to college and career readiness. You may access archived recordings of any of the previous webinars at any time on our website and on our YouTube channel on the links listed on the screen. And I should remind you that the YouTube channel links are closed captioned as well. So today we're here again to talk about aligning resources, and after some brief opening remarks, we will delve into some of the related challenges and promising strategies that focus on alignment. Jennifer Brown Lerner, Senior Director from AYPF, will lead this section of the webinar. Jennifer is the Senior Director of the American Youth Policy Forum and identifies and researches issues, policies, and programs for AYPF's learning events, such as the Capitol Hill Forum, site visits, and roundtable policy meetings, and other publications. Currently, she is organizing a series of forums on the role of career and technical education in high school reform. She will be joined and followed by Lynn Gilley, who currently serves as the Program Manager for the Career and Technical Education Instructional Branch at the Maryland State Department of Education. Lynn's responsibilities at MSDE include providing leadership to implement high-quality CTE programs for secondary and post-secondary learners. Finally, Melissa Jaggers, who's the Associate Executive Director of Alignment Nashville, works with community partners in Metro Nashville Public Schools to align resources and supports for children and youth in Nashville. More details of each of the presenters can be found on the website along with the other webinar materials. We invite you to read that as well as the other materials. So, before we get started, I want to share with you a couple housekeeping tips. First of all phones throughout the call will be muted to avoid any problems with noise, background noise, because we're recording this for future reference. Those that wish to communicate with us directly, and later on we'll be asking you to submit some questions and comments, can do so by using the panel to the right of your screen. You'll see on that panel a chat box that has a drop-down menu at the bottom that says Send To, and all participants, or you can select a participant to send a comment to, and you type your comment or inquiry or anything in the box, and remember to send the send button. Secondly, below that is a Q&A box that we'll be using to collect questions to ask our presenters toward the end of the presentation. The Q&A box works similarly to the chat box. Finally, I want to introduce another feature that we call polling, or the polling feature, that will enable us to collect information from you throughout the presentations and throughout the webinar. So let's see how the polling box works. We have a question to ask everybody about where you work and the types of work that you do. You'll see there are, I think, 6 different options that you can select. And this type of polling question, you can actually check off more than one option. So let's take a moment to ask each of you to go ahead and check as many boxes that apply to your work, and then we'll share that information with everybody. So we see we have a broad range of national, state, and local practitioners. We have some good portion of researchers and others, and approximately 19 folks who are working directly with students. Great. So again, we'll be using this feature throughout the presentation to ask several questions to you at various points. So let's start moving into the presentation itself. Over the past year, we have identified 3 structural challenges that many school district and state level practitioners and resource providers face as part of their efforts to actualize college and career readiness, and that have become a central theme of all of our webinars. First, there are the many variations of how to define college and career readiness and few ways to measure it, especially beyond the Common Core standards. Second, the traditional organization and cultures of many high schools do not necessarily ensure that all students graduate college and career ready. And third, many of the college and career ready services, resources, initiatives already underway are targeted at very specific needs with limited or no alignment to a more comprehensive approach. In short, with no common definition or measures, a mishmash of promising and not so promising piecemeal and often unaligned strategies are being tacked onto existing high school structures without any regard as to whether these are the most optimal conditions and approaches for promoting college and career success for all students. In reviewing the vast range of college and career readiness work over the past year, the National High School Center identified 3 intertwining strands of focus work by various stakeholder communities. And we consider these strands as part of our college and career development organizer that we're going to be talking about frequently throughout the presentation today. The first strand in our college and career development organizer is we call goals and expectations for college and career readiness. And basically, that strand answers the question, where do graduates need to get to and how do they get there? The second strand is called Pathways and Support for College and Career Preparation, and it asks the question, what paths and supports are necessary and need to be aligned to help students get to the end of their college and career readiness destination. And third, Outcomes and Measures for College and Career Success, which answers the question, how do we know when they're there? Let's take a quick look at each of these 3 strands a little more closely. Strand 1, Goals and Expectations, actually itself deconstructs into 3 separate threads: core content, pathways content, and lifelong learning skills. By core content, we mean the English language arts and math standards and other state standards that frequently are referred to now as the Common Core standards. Secondly, pathways content focuses more on the college and work trajectories, including eligibility requirements, student-declared aspirations, and formal programs of study, including CTE pathways, that we're going to be hearing a little bit about more today. Thirdly, lifelong learning skills that include all the other survival skills, social emotional skills such as resilience and self-governance, higher order thinking skills and including critical thinking, academic and employability skills, and even civic, consumer, and life skills that include financial literacy and good citizenship skills. You recall, for those of you that joined us in our webinar in week 1, David Connolly referred to many of these skills in this strand as key elements that range from cognitive strategies to learning skills and techniques. Secondly, in our second week, Brad Stam and his colleagues also referred to some of the pathways content and as part of the linked learning program. And most recently, last week, Lou Danielson and Betsy talked about self-determination around lifelong learning skills. Our second strand, Pathways and Supports, again focuses on the paths that students have to go through to get to that point, to get to their destinations. These include the personalized learning supports, the multiple pathways and courses of studies with built-in supports and differentiated instruction, and targeted interventions for content and credit recovery, and then rigorous programs of study that include the rigorous curriculum and instruction, blended learning and accelerated learning programs, well-defined pathways, as well as the whole college-going culture, college knowledge, college visits, college and career fairs, and the like. The third thread in this strand is aligning structures and programs, and this is where our primary focus today. Not only do we look at career academies, advisories, and other structures that promote college and career readiness, but also looking at engaging community stakeholders, including businesses and social providers, and Lynn and Melissa are going to delve into those topics as well. Our final strand, outcomes and measures for college and career success, looks at three different threads: on-track indicators that help us through benchmarks for academic progress and warning signs for off-track, and also include watching for application procedures and deadlines to make sure students are on track for post-secondary opportunities. Also includes attainment and authentication, which is where we certify that students have indeed reached the level of college and career readiness to proceed in their post-secondary endeavors. And finally, accountability and improvement, in which we look at institutional report cards and other indicators that are feedback loops for school improvement. So the organizer that we've talked about and that we shared with you, and I believe there's a link under the chat box to how to get there if you want to see the actual organizer itself. The organizer can be used for three main things: as a mapping tool for the college and career readiness landscape, as a discussion tool for helping practitioners think beyond the core standards, and as a set of Lego-type blocks for constructing contextually specific frameworks. But what the organizer can't be used for and shouldn't be used for is a framework by itself, because it lacks the interrelationships of the building block parts that are necessary, that need to be constructed at the local level so that they're contextually appropriate. It's also not a to-do list of strategies and components to be addressed. And finally, it's not a user manual on actualizing college and career readiness. So I want to introduce then Jennifer Brown Lerner, who will share with us some key considerations on using the College and Career Readiness Organizer, College and Career Development Organizer, and we'll introduce our other two presenters.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here, and AYPF is pleased to be partnering with the National High School Center. We believe that the organizer is an excellent tool to be a conversation starter for the conversations around college and career readiness at the state and district level. But we also believe there's a set of key considerations that you must consider before using the organizer. These include your definition of college and career readiness, an understanding of your stakeholders, a deep understanding of the complex context and political climate of your place, understanding your data system's capacity and use, as well as the indicators you intend to use to monitor your progress. I will explain each of these in further detail. We often all articulate college and career readiness as our goal, but we don't often dissect what we mean by college and career readiness. As demonstrated in the organizer and presented in previous webinars, college and career readiness is a complex concept that includes not only the core academic knowledge that students need, but the social-emotional skills and attitudes, college knowledge, higher-order thinking skills, and employer-desired traits. However you decide to define college and career readiness, whether you use a broad definition including everything I just mentioned or a narrow definition, if you so choose, it must be communicated among all those involved in the college and career readiness work across your entire education spectrum. We now have a question for you to answer, to consider. Do you have a definition of college and career readiness that you share with others engaged in your work? Folks, we'll just take a minute to answer that question. We can get a sense of who's done the building block work of thinking about what college and career readiness means for your community. So we'll give you about 10 more seconds to log in your responses. Pretty interesting so far. We're almost neck and neck. A little surprising. Anyway, well, obviously we believe that understanding your definition of college and career readiness is the basic building block, and we see the organizer as an excellent tool to helping you think about all of the components of a definition of college and career readiness. Given that the organizer can be used as a framework, you must next consider who will be part of your conversation. These are the stakeholders involved. Ideally, you want to think broadly and consider the widest net possible of people involved in the P20 workforce education spectrum. Those might include folks in K-12 education, higher education, the business community, legislators, the governor's office, school boards, the philanthropic community, the advocacy community, membership organizations, unions, or community-based organizations. In looking at this wide group of stakeholders, you must also consider a mechanism to continue to effectively convene these folks, whether it be through a P20 council, a children's cabinet, or another education governing entity. In addition to your stakeholders, and as the organizer cannot, as Joe mentioned before, the organizer cannot do, you must consider the unique context for your place. This includes the past efforts and involvement you've had around education, the economic realities of your place, and the political players involved in the broad education spectrum. Ideally, you want to map what you've already done and build upon the efforts that exist. For example, many folks are engaged in other national networks, such as Achieve's American Diploma Network, which has a leadership governing team of many of the key stakeholders I mentioned earlier. Here's a place where you can begin to build areas of convergence to move forward. Our goal in using the organizer is not to create initiative fatigue, but rather build buy-in broadly among the comprehensive the initiatives that you're already doing to engage in a more comprehensive set of strategies to ensure all students are college and career ready. And finally, as you move forward, you must also consider the information that's gotten you to this point in your education reform work, and then what information you need to use moving forward. Ideally, you have a good sense of the ability of your longitudinal data system at the state or district level, linking early childhood education through workforce data to monitor students' progress through your entire P20 spectrum. And with this system, you can begin to get feedback about the success of the pipeline at different points, whether or not the transitions between entities are working well and where you have areas for improvement. You also must consider the current data points that are driving your decision-making, and more importantly, with your broad group of stakeholders and under your new broadened definition of college and career readiness, build consensus data points to measure your goals and progress moving forward. All of these indicators, all of these considerations are important in using the organizer as a tool, as I mentioned before, for a conversation starter. And for just so everyone knows that in collaboration with the National High School Center, AYPF will be producing a brief around these key considerations, as well as additional work thinking about the alignment of your college and career ready work under the broad organizer. So given these considerations, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Lynn Gilly, who is going to give a state-based example of how they've begun to think about alignment, particularly between their core academic standards as well as their CTE pathways. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynn.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to have this opportunity to share some information about Maryland's new career and technology education state programs of study. We've had about 30 years of experience in this arena, and I'm going to talk to you about it in about 10 minutes, so I'll be moving fast through the slides. Next slide, please, Jennifer. You can see some quick facts about our programs. This is 2011 data. We had about 117,000 students enrolled in our programs in grades 10 to 12. in about 38 state programs of study, and then a number of locally designed programs of study. We're trying to migrate our local school systems into our state programs of study. We had a little over 57,000 graduates in 2011, 11,000 of which, or 19%, were in CTE and completed a program of study with us. 52% of those students were considered dual completers, and that means they're both college and career ready. That number, or that percentage, was 14% when we started measuring that back in 1992. We would love to see it go up to 100%, but that's one of our goals. Next slide, please. We began our mission of resolving a change in our career and technology education programs in 1989 with a report of the Maryland Commission on Vocational Technical Education. It happened in line with our first wave of reform here in Maryland for school systems. And what the report said in a nutshell was the system was not adequate to prepare graduates for the future careers. And so we worked diligently from about 89 to 95 to turn the ship around, start working on better curriculum, improved professional development, working with the business community and our higher ed partners. And in 1995, we brought in over 350 business and community members primarily and asked them the question, what do you do? When they defined their core functions, which later became our career pathways, which are just organizers to help students plan their future education and careers. And then in the next wave of reform, our third wave, we developed our state programs of study, which helped to align the workforce readiness needs with the core content areas and provide students with a focused program of study through high school. It's not a tracking mechanism. It's a way to give them a broad career preparation so that they're ready for both college and careers. So our program of study booklets, which I will give you a link to in the last slide, are outlines of our 10 career clusters and then the programs of study that are endorsed at the state level. Next slide, please. Next, okay, oops. Okay, so our stakeholder involvement at the state and local levels began around the time intensely that we had our School to Work grant in the early 90s, and a lot of you remember that era probably. But core to our mission was working with the business community, as I just mentioned. We really engaged them primarily to develop those CTE programs of study and make sure they were driven by the needs of business, industry, labor, that they met the demands of our workforce and economic development needs at both state and local levels, and in some cases even national levels. The whole idea was to promote greater cooperation between our public agencies and then the private sector. Next slide, please. This is Will Daggett's rigor relevance framework, and on the left side you'll see the cognitive domains that are in Bloom's taxonomy, and along the bottom a variety of levels of application. And we like to see that when you get to level 3, applying across disciplines, that you're getting students engaged in activities, that you're not just telling them information, they're getting involved. In level 4, they might be doing projects, and they're beginning to apply knowledge to predictable situations, maybe all coming up with the same answers. And when they get to level 5 along the bottom there, they're actually solving problems in unpredictable situations. And so we'd like to see our career and technology programs up there in that yellow quadrant of high rigor, high context. Our old voc ed used to be highly focused on recalling procedures, and we wanted to move away from that, and that's exactly what we've done. Next slide, please. So we have 10 career clusters and about 38 programs of study developed now, with more on the drawing board. And you can obviously access those at the link at the end. I'm not going to talk a lot about those right now. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Next slide, please. So how do we get students college and career ready? And I love the framework because, well, it's not really a framework, the organizer, because I think it helps provide a guidance beyond the fact that students are ready for college without the need for remediation, which is often the definition for college and career ready. We happen to feel that students need that core curriculum, but on top of that, a program of study that provides focus and a goal orientation, whether it's in CTE, the arts, an academy, whatever it is, it's very important to have a goal or a focus in mind. That work-based learning opportunities provide students with that context to apply what they're learning in the classroom in the real world. That there are course and program assessments of a high quality that provide rigor. That we then lead those into industry-recognized certifications or licenses so that students can obtain credentials while still in high school. as well as early college credit through transcripted credit or articulated credit. We prefer transcripted, where the student leaves us with credit on the transcript. We have a comprehensive system of career development. We believe every student should be engaged actively in career awareness, exploration, decision-making early on. Our student organizations provide those students with their leadership, civic, professional behaviors that are so important to transitioning into the adult world. And then lastly, our business-led program advisory committees at the state and local levels are often organized around our clusters called cluster advisory boards. We do them at the state level. We are each required to have our own for the clusters that we lead as state staff. Next slide, please. So what do we expect of our students? Well, we want them to have a pathway option. We want them to complete a program that's state approved. And by state approved, I mean in our office at the State Department of Education, we approve the programs of study that students can engage in. It's important to have a sequenced program of study so that students see a relationship between the courses they're learning, just like you would in a college major. In career development, we want to make sure students know how to identify goals. What are their interests? What are their skills? And how do they make informed decisions? We want students, as I said before, to take part in higher level content courses in conjunction with their CTE program of study. We encourage them not to drop the ball on math, science, etc. We want them to be prepared for the higher education they're going to face. And then that leads to college and career readiness. They can complete both the CTE program of study and meet the college admission requirements here in Maryland. So next slide, please. I happen to like Cliff Edelman's work. This came out in 1999 from the U.S. Department of Education. It's called Answers in the Toolbox, but it just points to the fact that the level of rigor of the secondary preparation of students, particularly their participation in mathematics, determines how far they're going to go in college. And of all pre-college curricula, the highest level of math a student takes is the strongest continuing influence on bachelor's degree completion. In other words, math is the gatekeeper to higher education. And if a student can complete the course above the level of Algebra 2, that will more than double the odds that they'll complete a bachelor's degree. It's pretty profound, but it's true. Next slide, please. So in our new CTE programs, what are some features that we think help students become more college and career ready? Well, we want them to apply through activities, projects, problems, new knowledge. We don't want them to sit and get. We want them to be able to be thinkers. We want them to be engaged actively in challenging inquiry-based instructions. They're the ones designing the solutions to the problems, not the teacher guiding them through the solution. They've got to figure it out. They get to present independent mentored projects where business, industry, the healthcare community, the broader nonprofit community is helping them. They can research and write technical reports. They collaborate on teams, and they focus on thinking, not mastering procedures. Next slide, please. So what kind of outcomes does this get us? Well, we've increased our enrollment in the state programs of study. As you can see, there continues to be an increase in the programs of study that we design and help provide professional development and technical assistance for at the state level. Next slide. We're getting results through an increase in our career technology education students' graduation rate. Career technology education has holding power. We have higher retention and graduation rates for CTE students than for the general overall student population. Next slide, please. And we're starting to see greater numbers of students earning industry-recognized credentials that are appropriate and available. We don't just go with anything that comes along. We're very, very careful about what we select for an industry-recognized credential. We want it to have meaning in the workplace. And so you can see the state average is a little over 57%, and that we are increasing the numbers and percentage of students who are earning these credentials while still in high school, which gives them that value-added leg up on other high school graduates. The next slide indicates that, you know, we are a part of the recognized and valued measures at the state level, from the governor's office in state stat, managing for results. In Education Week, we were named #1 in public education for 4 years in a row by Quality Counts, and #1 in transitions and alignment, which is aligning the pre-K to 12 standards with early learning and college and career expectations. And then our own governor has developed Skills to Compete, which is our workforce and economic development initiative, to help increase the number of our graduates who earn industry credentials and then progress into a career. Next slide, please. So how did we organize our staff to get the results we've gotten? Well, we created cluster teams internally, and we evaluate staff using a matrix management approach. So I have people on my cluster teams. I have the Health and Biosciences cluster team, and I have the Manufacturing, Engineering, and Technology cluster team. And I have people who are not in my branch who serve on those teams, but we work collaboratively across those branches to get the work done. We've developed partnerships with our secondary, post-secondary, and industry representatives to help improve our programs. We've identified affiliates, and that's a Project Lead the Way program term that we kind of stole. Those are the universities, nonprofit organizations, businesses, commercial organizations that help support our curriculum and professional development for our CTE teachers. We use our pre-graduate survey to determine whether students have filled out that financial aid form and have completed their high school program planning. And then the next slide. We've aligned our resources to help support our state programs of study. We provide grants to drive and incentivize the programs of study that we'd like to see implemented, while providing technical assistance and additional in-staff support. We use our performance data to promote continuous improvement and work with local school systems to use informed decision-making with our data. We've disseminated our policies and procedures for CTE programs to help understand what it is we're looking for in a consistent, standardized program of study. And we have appointed a panel that really represents that larger circle of friends, and critical friends, I would say, from state agencies and secondary and post-secondary educators who can help us determine when a program should be, phased out or improved. And finally, we provide technical assistance and professional development to a variety of our stakeholder groups, including all of our local school systems and community colleges, in partnership with the business community and higher education. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today.
Lynn, thank you so much for your really excellent presentation. I think you gave us a great idea of the hard work that it took in Maryland to really closely align the academic content and standards with your career pathways. And what I was really struck by from your presentation was the role that business played, and when you showed your stakeholder graphic, towards the beginning, that business was really at the center, knowing that that was the end point in which you wanted all students to be able to go to be successful in a job. So I want to throw another poll question out there to those of you tuned in, asking, do you regularly engage the business community in your college and career ready efforts? And give you an opportunity to answer that question. And I know some of you have asked about seeing the poll results, and we will shortly be able to do that. But more importantly, I wanted to remind everyone that's tuned in that you can use either the chat feature or the question and answer feature on the sidebar to pose questions to our panelists. We have left plenty of time at the end of this webinar for some of your questions, and we will take advantage of some of your pre-submitted questions also. So we see folks beginning to answer the poll, and before I introduce our next speaker, just want to say that, wow, it looks like on average folks are pretty regularly engaging the business community, which is great. And I think that speaks volumes about where folks see the end point for students being, and so I think that's really fantastic. So thanks, Lynn, again for your remarks. And I do want to move on to our next speaker, Melissa Jaggers with Alignment Nashville. Melissa's working at a district local level, and her organization is really a third-party organization based out of who convenes many of these stakeholders. And she's going to talk not only about her organization, but the process that they use around convening, as well as some of the outcomes at their district level. So with that, Melissa.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, I'm glad to be here today and be able to share a little bit about what's happening in Nashville, specifically through Alignment Nashville, and really get into a little bit of detail about the process that we developed and that we use for aligning resources and how we know it works, and really connecting that and to college and career readiness by talking about how we've worked to really build the capacity of the entire community to work to make sure that all of our students are ready for college and career. So really kind of going outside of the typical universe of college and career service providers, but trying to engage the entire community in that effort. So on the next slide, you'll just see a little bit about Nashville, just to kind of give you a picture of where we are. The total population in Metro Nashville is about 626,000. Our public school enrollment is actually expected to top 80,000 this fall for the first time. So we are a large, urban, and a very diverse student body. We have upwards near 80% students that are participating in free and reduced lunch, and lots of diversity racially and ethnically among our populations. On the next slide, you'll see the mission of Alignment Nashville, and it really is working to align existing resources to support shared goals and outcomes. And our goals are to have a positive impact on public school success, children's health, and the success of our community as a whole. And a little bit of history on the next slide, just to give you an idea of where Alignment came from. It really was born in the business community, and the discussion started back in 2002, where the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, some leaders that were interested in public education, actually commissioned a study to see how we could do a better job of supporting public education in Nashville. And the outcome of the study was that we did need some sort of structure to align community resources to create that positive impact. And actually the recommendation was for some sort of a more of a grassroots approach to really bring community organizations together and to convene. But the business leaders really were adamant that they wanted there to be more of a structure and a process to do that, to make sure that it was that there was accountability and transparency involved, and to make sure that there would be movement, that we were going to actually be moving the needle on those collective goals. And they also were pretty sure that they were very clear that they wanted to align to the district's to the school district's strategic plan, that there didn't need to be another strategic plan developed, that we were going to support what the school district needed help with most. And so in 2006, in a minute I'll talk a little bit more about this, but in 2006 our high school committee did lead an effort to transform the high schools in Nashville using the Academy model. And in subsequent years we did add focus areas in children's health, working with out-of-school and out-of-work young adults, and on special populations, family engagement, and others. And now we are working with the district to roll out a district-wide community school model called Community Achieves. And on the next slide, Alignment Nashville is, you see a lot of the buzzwords that you hear around often, collective impact. You did mention earlier, Jennifer mentioned a P20 council. We are the P20 council for Nashville, Davidson County. We are an intermediary organization, cradle to career. We convene and align to strategic goals and existing resources. And as I said, we are a framework for developing community schools. And our operating principles on the next slide are also important to understand and to kind of get an overview. And I think it really gives you an idea that what we work on is systemic change. We're really focused on that generational systemic change. And that is tough work, that we're looking at very complex problems. There are not simple answers. There is not one single answer for that one single organization can provide. And so if we're going to do that and we're going to really focus on the whole child, then we have to have this structure for ongoing generational collaboration. In the next slide, you're going to look at it and say, there is no way, I know you can't see everything that's on here, tiny little print, but the takeaway that I wanted you to see on this slide is, if you look at this is the work of our committees kind of across an age continuum from birth through young adulthood. And so we really do see what we're doing. It's that cradle to career. It's a very broad approach, and making sure that we're looking at every step of the process. And you'll see lots of areas of convergence, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, in different areas of the age continuum. So on the next slide, you'll see a little bit about our organizational process, and our structure is very important to how we do what we do. We do have, as most nonprofits, we do have a high-level board of directors, which does provide governance and oversight, and these are the CEOs, the mayor, the director of schools, presidents of colleges and universities, the president of the United Way. Most local funders are all on that board, and they do provide that high-level governance. But we also have an operating board, which meets monthly, and that is a network of leaders within organizations across the community, and also serve as chairs and vice chairs of our committees. This group meets monthly, and their role is to oversee what's happening in the committees, and they do provide some peer-level accountability and network opportunities for the community. And then on the bottom row in the green, you see the committees, which are really design and implementation teams. And I'll talk a little bit more about how they do that. But they're charged with designing solutions, collaborative solutions, and implementing those solutions. So on the next slide, you'll see a picture of our process. And again, this is very important to understanding how we do what we do. The role of the staff of Alignment Nashville, such as myself, is to guide each committee through this process. And you'll see down at the bottom, the tactical planning, step 1 is the first step, and that's where the committees design solutions. They look at what is the most pressing need identified in the strategic plan, and they design solutions that leverage existing resources to meet that need. They move to the next step, which is community engagement, and this is where they invite the community to collaborate in implementing those solutions, and again by aligning existing resources. And this is where we really build the capacity of the community to address issues. We tend to uncover what we call unusual suspects, and we're able to use resources maybe a little bit differently in different ways, and really aligning them to meet those needs. And then they move through implementation, of course, evaluation. We're very careful to always measure what we're doing and make sure that it is having an impact. And if it's not, then we go back to tactical planning and design a new solution. Scale up if it is working, and then eventually institutionalization, which could also be called community ownership. So a great example of how the process works would be our high school committee. And on the next slide, you'll see just a few bullets about kind of where we were in 2006. Alignment Nashville had been started. We had about 5 committees at that time that were focused on different age groups, and one of those was our high school committee. And at that time in 2006, we had very low achievement scores, and our graduation rates were below 70%. And alongside that, we had community support and perception of MNPS was low. And we knew that committee, the high school committee, which was chaired by the associate superintendent for high schools at the school district, knew that they needed to implement transformation. As I said before, more of a generational long-term change. But he also knew that he needed to do that alongside the community. He had to have the community support, had to have the community engagement at a deep level. So he knew that using that alignment committee process, the Alignment Nashville committee process, would be the way to create a shared vision and that included rigor, relevance, and relationships for all of Nashville's public high schools. So that committee led a process that engaged more than 60 community stakeholders. They led the strategic planning process that uncovered that the Academy model was really the best way to build on the strong CTE programs that we had in Nashville, but to make sure that we were offering rigorous college and career prep for all of our students. So on the next slide, you'll see another tiny print chart, but this is actually was the outcome of that strategic plan. And this created the basis for a successful grant proposal to the Department of Education that brought almost $7 million to Nashville to fund our high school transformation. And when we got the comments back from that grant, by and large, I think the number one reviewers' comments was that they were just blown away by the amount of collaboration that was so clear, and by the community support for the redesign that was clear in the proposal. So the next steps, we had the grant, and the next step was that we had to build a business engagement structure that would be sustainable, and that, again, would focus on college and career readiness for all of our students. And so we went back to step 1 of the committee process to design that structure, which was tactical planning, and, again, making sure that we were using existing resources. Now, on the next slide, you'll see a chart that also informed the development of that business and school engagement structure. This chart was actually developed by Sydney Rogers, who's the Executive Director at Alignment Nashville. She actually presented this at an American Youth Policy Forum in 2008 and an event in D.C. But what we knew is that we needed to develop a structure that supported, if you'll see to the left, combined engagement, that we needed all types of engagement, starting at the top with the flyover level, which provides financial support, maybe some in-kind, but with no other involvement. Moving towards technical support, which is a little bit more advice and technical assistance, maybe serving on an advisory committee, coming into the classroom to support equipment and installation, and all the way up to what's defined on the chart as a stakeholder partner, which is boots on the ground, full engagement with students. And you'll see some examples of what that can look like. And it does result in excellent academic results. So the committee did develop a structure and went through the process of implementing that. And on the next slide, you'll see as a result, we do have a structure that includes these elements, CEO Champions, which is a CEO level, again, advocacy group in the community, partnership councils that meet based on on 6 industry clusters, academy advisory boards, academy sponsors, partners that play many roles across our district and support what we now have 12 wall-to-wall, 12 high schools that are wall-to-wall with academies. And 6 years later, this structure is thriving, it's growing, and it has actually served to be a sustaining role throughout these past 6 years. There are many times that the transformation could have been jeopardized by changes in leadership, by changes in just the political will of the community. But because we had such a strong business engagement and so many stakeholders were involved in and believed in that this was the way that our high schools needed to function, it protected that reform through that time. And so, as I said, this is one example, but of how our process has worked to support college and career readiness. But again, Alignment Nashville is about much more than that, and it's a very broad approach to making sure that all of our students are successful. And so, in looking at the organizer, if you'll see on the next screen, I did just take a minute. And I won't go through all of these initiatives, but on the next slide, aligning resources for lifelong learning skills. Again, across the continuum, looking at how in elementary school, character education, school culture in the middle school, social emotional learning, the focus on the whole child, and making that experiential learning, civic engagement through service learning. All of these initiatives have come out of committees that are convened and facilitated through Alignment Nashville. The next slide also support for personalized learning, definitely involved in health and wraparound family services, positive behavioral intervention supports, again, social emotional learning, and especially family engagement, which is a very important part, and we've had a huge emphasis on that through our parent university efforts. And again, on the next slide, still in strand 2, the post-secondary experiences and preparation, experiential learning, looking at dual enrollment, college credits, looking at improving the college-going culture in high schools, and then alternative pathways and the GED pathway for out of school, out of work, and re-engagement strategies for the community. And so in the next slide, you'll see some outcomes. And again, as I said, we've worked to build community capacity to address the complex issues. And this is one shared indicator. If you look at our graduation rates, you can see that they've definitely improved every year, and they continue to improve, and that is a result of the community approach. And on the next slide, the outcomes that have resulted specifically from the transformation high school, of the high school transformation work. So graduation rates, looking that they have increased at every zoned high school and increased district-wide up to almost 83%, seen an increase in attendance and also a decrease in discipline. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the work of Alignment Nashville, you can definitely start at our website. And all of these articles feature our work in different cases. And I would highlight the first bullet, the United States Chamber of Commerce, their Institute for a Competitive Workforce case study is one example that talks about the importance of business engagement. And all of these are good examples of how Alignment has worked to build community capacity. If your community would like to learn more about the structure and processes that we've developed and that we use, on the next slide you'll see information about our Alignment Institute 2012, and we do host this annually in conjunction with Alignment Rockford, who we worked with Rockford, Illinois over the past 18 months to implement our alignment structure and processes there, and they have done an incredible job and have seen great results so far there. So on the next slide, you'll see our website along with Alignment Rockford's website. I would encourage you to go there to learn more about our work, and especially on the 2011 annual report will provide more details about all of the committee work that happens through Alignment Nashville. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for your really excellent presentation. I wanted to open up another poll to the audience. And you'll see the question popping up. Do you have a third-party organization or mechanism, something similar to Alignment Nashville, intermediary, P20 council, whatever you want to call, that is the convener of your college and career readiness stakeholders? We heard a lot about the sustainability of the work in Nashville and also the long-term work, or the long-term aspect of the work in Maryland, and I think the role of a third-party convener is really important. And so we're just wondering if folks out there are interested, have a similar mechanism. So you can see that it's about half and half, as the poll results will be displayed shortly. And as we move to the next slide, we're just going to throw back up there the four considerations that I mentioned briefly before. Understanding your definition of college and career readiness, which we've heard both from Lynn and Melissa about the definition used in their communities. Understanding your stakeholders, and again, you've seen a really wide net of stakeholders, from the governor's office to the business community, K-12, higher education, and in some cases, political leaders as well. Understanding the climate context and political climate. You heard a little bit of both from Melissa and Lynn. And finally, your data system capacity and your use and your indicators of progress. And the amazing progress both in Maryland and Nashville was noted in the sharp increase in your outcomes in the past few years. So we really appreciate you sharing with us. I just want to remind folks that you have the option of submitting questions either through the chat function, and you might need to expand the tab, or the question and answer tab. And again, you can direct your questions to any specific presenter or to all the panelists as a whole. So before we get to some of the audience questions, I do want to pose some questions myself for both Lynn and Melissa. You guys talked a lot about the spectrum, the education spectrum, from early childhood in through post-secondary education and careers. And I'm really wondering about that space that exists between high school and college or career or whatever comes next. What are some specific strategies or practices which has proven effective in your work to smooth that transition for students as they graduate from high school and move into what comes next, either college or careers? What's been successful in helping to prepare them and move them through more successfully? Lynn, will you take that question first?
Sure. I think, first of all, our P20 Council here in Maryland, under the governor's leadership, has been very active and working collaboratively. We're a small state. We can get together all in one place very easily and work strategically in subcommittees to try to figure out solutions to problems that, affect our livelihood, our workforce, and economic development. We've had a lot of close collaboration among the state agencies and working with their local workforce investment boards, school districts, and colleges to try and come up with a strategy that is consistent and meaningful across all sectors. So our P20 Council provides a lot of leadership, for example, helping all sectors understand our involvement in the Partnership for the Assessment of College and Career Readiness. We're a Park State. Helping to ensure that the secondary and post-secondary systems are working together to move that alignment so that students make a seamless transition from high school to college. Using our state program advisory committees to ensure that business and labor and industry representatives are meaningfully involved, not just once a year coming to dinner. They meet with us on a regular basis, and they're very frank. In fact, they're helping us have the hard conversations when it comes to saying a program needs to be changed. Why is the state requiring our students to take chemistry now in health? And we don't have to answer that question anymore. The business community, the higher ed community speaks up for us. So it's that shared thinking that has grown out of collaboration that has helped us to come together in a more consistent fashion to ensure that we have a seamless system to provide students with college and career readiness.
Great. Thanks so much, Lynn. And Melissa, do you want to take that question as well?
Sure. I think we've really focused on, in Nashville, we've really focused on the power of earning college credit, both still in high school through dual enrollment, and also the opportunities to earn industry certifications, but really between higher education to the college credit and dual enrollment. And working on, again, engaging the community in that and making sure that parents understand that opportunity and are taking advantage for it and advocating for it in their schools, as well as experiential learning, the work-based learning opportunities, and service learning opportunities we see as an effective method of ensuring that transition And our post-secondary partners are absolutely at the table, and we have so many articulation agreements worked out that make that a seamless pathway into college for our students.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I wanted to ask you guys another question, which came in through some of the pre-submitted questions earlier about thinking about what tools or even what measures you're using to indicate the career readiness of students either in high school or as they graduate from high school. Do you have particular skills or a set of tools that you're using to indicate some of these measures of career readiness now? Melissa, do you want to take that question first?
Well, sure. First of all, Nashville, through our high school committee, developed 5 characteristics of a Metro Nashville Public School graduate. And these characteristics, they are that the student earns at least a 21 on the ACT, that they have an experiential learning, which could be capstone research, work-based learning, or service learning, that they have at least one of those opportunities during their high school career. The third is that they earn either college credit or industry certification. The fourth is that they participate in online learning, at least one online learning course. And then the fifth is that they have a 10-year plan for post-secondary and or career. Right now, we are working on a data system to make sure that we're tracking that all of the students do have an effect characteristics before they graduate.
Fantastic. That's really exciting. Thanks so much for sharing. Lynn, do you want to take that question as well?
Yeah, I would agree completely with the list that she gave you, and I would also add that a lot of the behaviors we're looking at aren't really observable from the standpoint of a test or something like that. So what we try to do are many of the same things that she described: portfolios, internships, web-based learning, work-based learning, early college access and success. But we also have a requirement now for grade 3 to 12 financial literacy. We're looking at, helping students understand better what is the return on investment of pursuing a career and getting a college degree in a particular area, so that they understand what it will take to pay back student loans, that kind of thing. And when we talk about these behaviors not being readily assessed, we try to involve our students in student organizations that have professional development programs that help them to develop those civic and professional behaviors and leadership skills that are so important in the real world that they don't get an opportunity to develop otherwise. So we have 5 competencies or skills. They're called Skills for Success. They are communication, thinking, learning, technology, and interpersonal skills. They're very much aligned with the new common career technical core skills that are the career ready practices. And so those have been in existence for quite some time here, and we'd like to see students have experiences in those areas as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm going to turn it back over to Joe Harris, who's going to ask some additional questions to everyone that's been a part of the webinar.
Great. Thanks. So I have a couple questions that have come in and a couple other questions that we collected as part of the registration process. So let's start with the questions that we've been receiving, and I want to continue to encourage folks to ask additional questions by typing in either into the the chat box or in the Q&A box, and we'll see that if we can get those questions answered immediately. So an earlier question while you were presenting, Lynn, came in from Dale Fowler asking, what role did faith-based organizations play in Maryland's revised CTE program?
Well, not a strong role, but we do have a number of non-public and private schools that are organized around a religion. And we have our project Lead the Way Biomedical Sciences, as well as our engineering programs in several of the private parochial schools. And so what we've done is we've worked collaboratively with them, even though we can't fund them. We've exposed them to our programs. We've shared information. We visited with them. We've provided technical assistance. We invite them to our training and professional development because we believe this is an all-students activity. So we want all students to have exposure, and many of the students in our parochial schools haven't had the opportunity to enroll in a CTE program, either because they don't live close enough to a career program or they're not enrolled in their public high school. So we found that this has been a nice way to get these students access and their leaders, administrators, and teachers have been coming to our training and workshops and professional development.
Great, thanks. So another question now to Melissa. How are you engaging institutions of higher education in this work? I know you've mentioned a lot about business involvement and the reaching out to businesses, but what about higher education institutions as well? And that's from Chris McGaughy.
Well, higher education institutions, first of all, are represented very heavily throughout our alignment structure. And specifically for the high schools, they are part of the partnership councils that have worked on recommending pathways and academies, and are absolutely part of the discussion for the development of pathways into higher education. But they're also involved, as I mentioned, the presidents of the colleges and universities in the area also serve on our board of directors, and as such have had their high-level staff serving on our operating board and chairing several of our committees that, again, are working across the continuum of age groups. So they're really threaded throughout everything that we do.
Great. Thank you. So question now to Lynn. What is the relationship between content preparation and 21st century skills? What resources are available to support this connection, and why are they important, and how are they connected?
Well, the relationship is a symbiotic one. I mean, we feel like students need to know the core content, but they have to have a context for which to apply it. And sometimes that occurs through a job interview, working in a corporation, having access and exposure to projects, experiments that they haven't had an opportunity to see before. So what we've tried to do is provide them with rich opportunities to apply professional standards in the workplace as well as in the classroom. Many of our students are graded on their classroom behaviors in addition to the content they are to master. So customer service skills are important, being able to resolve a contentious situation, using those good communication skills, and not getting angry when a customer disagrees with something you've said or doesn't like what you've done. So I guess they have to work hand in glove. I taught cosmetology. I had a student who was excellent at the customer service skills when the clients came in, but she didn't get along well with her peers. And she always wondered why her grade on those kinds of skills wasn't as high. And you can't be contentious with your peers and give good customer service skills. It has to be on all the time. And so that's the kind of mentality we're trying to promote with our students is this is a skill you learn and you apply every day in your work, when you work with peers, when you work with customers.
Great. Thanks. So Melissa, I think we're having a little bit of problem with your phone. So let's see if you can speak or back away from the speaker when you're answering this question. Where does one get started when dealing with college and career readiness in alternative high schools programs for students at risk of dropping out or adjudicated youth? And a broader question, what does the role of social service agencies have in Alignment Nashville?
Well, again, the social service agencies are represented across the continuum and of all of our committees. Specific to our high school efforts, we've really worked at integrating those services and not so much as wraparound services, but actually integrating those into the school day, into the school environment, which is a big part of when I referred to the community schools effort, which we call Community Achieves in Nashville, really integrating the social services systematically across the district. As far as college and career readiness in the alternative high schools, we have what locally was developed, and I know it was adapted from some national tools. We have a professional skills rubric, which is similar to what Lynn was describing. And it has been used in different ways across the district and in different school settings, but that's something that has also been used. It was tweaked by our local partnership councils to meet local workforce needs. But as Lynn was saying, it does, actually give the students a grade on things like timeliness, teamwork, a lot of those workforce skills and college skills, honestly, a lot of the same skills that are needed in both settings. and I know those have been used in the alternative high school settings as well. But we've really focused on making sure that the students who need the college and career access services the most have needed them, that have needed them most have had access to them. So that has been the focus of a couple of our committees specifically on those alternative high school populations.
So this is a question to Lynn. My school is moving forward with a pathways to career and college readiness. I need to be able to embed credits into the students' internships. What is the most powerful piece of learning that I can do before August?
I would suggest having a very good organizer for the training agreement that goes between the school and the employer and has clearly defined academic, technical, and employability skills that the student will learn, and that the student be given an interest in inventory ahead of time so that they're matched with an appropriate employment opportunity so that the students can be interviewed and feel like this is a professional placement for them. We find that when there's an agreement that's signed by the employer and the school and that it's well monitored by a supervisor both at the workplace as well as through the school, and there are agreed upon goals and objectives in the academic, employability, and work technical skills, that it's a rich opportunity for students and the employer alike.
Great, thanks. Okay, Melissa, one other question. How can after-school expanded learning and community organizations support college and career readiness?
Well, specifically to after-school programs, one thing that we're working on is, I mentioned the 5 characteristics of a high school graduate. We are beginning the process of working backwards and developing characteristics for middle school and elementary school that support that end vision. And through the alignment process, what we'll do is engage those providers, after-school, extended learning, out-of-school time providers, and in helping support those characteristics. So if you take, for example, one of the characteristics for our high school graduates is experiential learning, which can involve service learning. We could, through our committee process, we could actually provide some training for, and we will provide training on service learning for those out-of-school time providers so that they can provide and help support providing those opportunities for all of our students.
Thanks. So, Lynn, you know the challenge of citing statistics in front of math teachers. So we have a question for you from Aisa Espinoza. Where did you get that statistic of completing a bachelor's degree depending on the math class?
It's in the book I referred to. It's called Answers in the Toolbox, and it is on page Romanet 7. It's in the executive summary of Answers in the Toolbox. If you Google Answers in the Toolbox, the U.S. Department of Education, Clifford Adelman, I cited him on the slide. He did some research back in '99, but mathematics still is a huge gatekeeper to college access, as is the high school curriculum. The academic intensity and quality of the high school curriculum is one of the major factors in affecting students' ability to complete a bachelor's degree, with mathematics being particularly important. And it's right there in the book. It's right under selected findings, and you'll see it there.
Lynn, this is Jennifer. I just want to commend you on being so well prepared with the actual table that statistic is from. I hope everyone that's tuned in recognizes how hard all of our presenters work to prepare for this session. And I think, not that both of you didn't go the extra mile, but kudos to you, Lynn, for really knowing your stuff.
Oh, thank you.
And I second that. So I'm checking. I don't see any additional questions coming in. But I do want to continue to share other opportunities to respond to inquiries. We got some general inquiries during the registration process that we will address as well. And one forum that we would like to use to address those inquiries is a new feature of the National High School Center that we introduced at the start of these webinars in June, and that is a college and career readiness community of practice. I'd like to introduce Dr. Helen Duffy, who is our college and career readiness coordinator and has been overseeing the implementation of our new college and career readiness community of practice. We have the capacity, as she will demonstrate, to be able to list questions and responses, share resources, and engaged in a continuing, ongoing, threaded discussion. And we'll be inviting our presenters to continue to address questions that you raise that any participant raises after viewing the PowerPoint that you want to raise to the broader community. We also will continue to invite comments from you as well. So Helen, why don't you give us a quick walkthrough of the community of practice, since we have a few extra moments.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And I also want to thank the presenters today for sharing their work. I think one of the things that the High School Center is pretty good at is identifying and bringing people to the table who have particular expertise, but we also acknowledge that there's a great deal more expertise than what we can actually feature on a webinar such as this, and that there are promising practices out there that we all can learn from. And so given that, we launched a community of practice at the beginning of the month that is designed for users to continue to engage in these kinds of conversations that we've begun this month. In the community of practice, members can interact with other like folks who are engaged in this work. You can access any of the National High School Center's college and career readiness resources, and also learn about upcoming events. So in order to get to the community of practice, you can type in this URL, and I think Maggie will probably post that URL in the chat box as well. And that will take you to a landing page where you can, if you're already a member of one of the National High School Center's other communities of practice, the Early Warning System community of practice or the High School Tiered Interventions community, you can simply use your credentials to log in, and then you would click on the College and Career Readiness logo. That would take you to the College and Career Readiness community. If you're new to the High School Center's community of practice, we would just ask you to fill in those credentials that you see on the right side of the slide, and you would receive an email from us with instructions on how to access the community. If you don't receive this email, you can email the National High School Center community at AIR.org, and we'll provide some assistance. So once you're on the community page, there are a number of things that you can do. You can read and comment on resources, publications. You can start your own discussion. You can look at the calendar of events. Some of the discussions that are already open on the site are things like extended graduation options for students with disabilities, competencies of college and career counselors, social and emotional character development standards, questions about how C2E funds can be used to innovate and create new pathways, how core content and C2E teachers can collaborate, state performance indicators, that sort of thing. So we invite you all to join the community and share with us your expertise, any resources that you think might be useful to others who are working in this area, and look forward to continuing the conversation. Joe?
Thank you. So as we start wrapping up, I wanted to take one last opportunity to invite our major presenters, Melissa and Lynn, to see if you have any additional comments or one last pearl of wisdom you'd like to share, advice to others getting started on the journey or those along the way. Let's start with Melissa.
Well, I would say that, again, as I try to emphasize, we're really looking at long-term sustainable change, and that takes a lot of patience, and it takes building a lot of political will in a community, and that's an ongoing process for us, and that is something that we really work to keep at the forefront of discussions across the community, and just making sure that it's not really just focused in the traditional college and career readiness conversations, but broadening that, and how, as you said, linking in with early childhood education all the way up through young adult re-engagement, and also including families and caregivers in that conversation. So it's an ongoing process, and it does take patience, but we are seeing the results here in Nashville and are excited to see continued improvements.
Great. How about you, Lynn?
I would agree, and I would just say thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, we certainly appreciated your contributions. Jennifer, you have any comments?
Well, I too want to express my thanks to the National High School Center for hosting it, and of course our presenters from Maryland and Nashville. And I hope that you've seen that, the organizer paired with considerations of your definition, your stakeholders, your context, and your data and indicators of progress really become the foundational building blocks for building a comprehensive system for all students to be college and career ready that don't just sit at high school, but really perforate through the entire P20 education system. And as we continue to develop other tools and resources, we hope that you'll stay tuned. And of course, you can learn more about AYPF's work by looking at our website, www.aypf.org. So thanks again.
Well, thank you. Thanks again to Melissa and Lynn, and to Helen, who's a member of the High School Center staff. Before we sign off, I want to invite folks to use the chat box to make some suggestions to us for a series of similar type webinars in the fall. We'd like to hear from you. You can email us as well to our website, to our email address. You can comment on our Facebook account. You can, whichever way you're comfortable, please send us some suggestions for going forward. These have been a very rich set of presentations over the month from a variety of experts. We appreciate those participants that have participated in all of the presentations, and for those of you also that have joined us for one or more presentations that are of particular interest to you as well. We look forward to continuing the conversation. In closing, I want to thank Maggie Monrad, Matt Howenstein, and Jenny Scala, who were very instrumental in pulling off the organizing and implementation of these webinars. And again, thank all participants for the contribution that you made by giving of your valuable time and your contributions to ensuring that all kids are college and career ready. We look forward to seeing you again in the fall. In the meantime, please visit us in our community of practice, or again, visit, you see on the screen, links to many of the different types of social media where you can access the High School Center. See you in the fall.